With his characteristically thick-framed glasses and his leopard skin hat, Mobutu Sese Seko, Marshal Mobutu, ruled unchallenged for 32 years in the Democratic Republic of Congo. He came to power in 1965 amid two successive coups. He was supported by the former colonial power Belgium and by the US in the ongoing fight against communism. But Mobutu also played the cards of patriotism and national pride. In 1971, he renamed the country Zaire, forced men to wear a new distinctive tunic, and made people choose names of African origin. Then, as the price of commodities collapsed, he nationalised foreign companies. Corruption, then, though, taking hold at every level of the country's administration. Mobutu began to accumulate massive wealth, and he ordered the construction of massive palaces. A whole city rose out of the earth, right in the middle of the tropical jungle, Gbadolite. Mobutu reigns all-powerful.
I have the legitimacy of popular support behind me, which means that I've been elected for 7 years. My mandate will end at midnight on the 4th of December, 1991. I am a candidate for another term after that. I am announcing that, and I'm not afraid to do so.
You'll still be there in the year 2000.
Well, why not? In 2 months, I'll be 60. The year 2000 is 10 years away. Why not?
Well, little by little, though, corruption became endemic and the violent regime slowly began to falter. Long-suffering Zairians fighting back. Weakened by cancer, Mobutu slowly withdrew into his Gbadolite stronghold. In 1997, Mobutu driven from power by the rebellion of Laurent Désiré Kabila, and he died in Morocco just a few months later. Despite, though, 3 decades of violence and oppression, some Congolese still feel a certain nostalgia for the Zaire years. Our reporters Horace Garcia and Tomina Nicolon revisit the ruins of his palace at Gbadolite for France 24.
It was known as the Versailles of the jungle. On a hill overlooking untouched forest stands the ruins of Kawele. A magnificent 15,000 square metre palace complex, once the favourite home of Mobutu Sese Seko. Those who knew it remember a luxurious, almost surreal place.
There was marble everywhere. It was so shiny, but also slippery.
Today, what remains of the palace's rooms gives us a glimpse of Mobutu's legendary opulence. In this suite, the dictator's remote-controlled bed was once positioned on a cross carved into the rock.
He worked hard. He would get up early and go to bed late at night. At 5:30, he was already up and making phone calls to know the general mood in the country.
I'm very upset because I know how his residence used to be. Seeing it like this today, it breaks my heart. It was a sumptuous palace, worthy of a great head of state and the great Zaire of the time.
Mahogany doors, marble walls, or crystal chandeliers, Mobutu spared no expense lavishing millions on the complex. It was here that he welcomed heads of states from all over the world.
Belgian King Baudouin and French Presidents Chirac and Mitterrand were here. There used to be a pool here and a fountain. When there was a party, people would gather around to eat. At night, it was a beautiful sight.
In May 1997, the Alliance of Democratic Forces for the Liberation of Congo, a rebel group led by Laurent Désiré Kabila, seized power, overthrowing the man who'd become known as a Leopard of Zaire. Kawele estate was subsequently looted and partially destroyed.
I was there when the shooting happened. Soldiers weren't shooting at close range towards people. They were shooting to scatter the crowd. After that, they would start looting the place. Then they left. But our father Marshal was already gone. It was the end of his reign. He was ill. There was a cargo at the airport. It took him to exile.
One morning, after 32 years of dictatorship, Mobutu fled the country via Gbadolite Airport. He would never return. Today, the airport's control tower is out of service, and soldiers occupy the Chinese pagoda that was once reserved for distinguished guests. During the 1970s, at the peak of the leopard's reign, the 3,200-meter-long runway could accommodate a Concorde, under the stunned gaze of the town's residents. In 1967, Gbadolite was a tiny village of mud huts. Just a few years after taking power, Mobutu transformed the place into a modern town. With banks, a post office, and even a hydroelectric plant. An extraordinary feat in this province cut off from the world. These days, everything in Gbadolite recalls the days of Mobutu. Buildings frozen in time, witness to years of excessive opulence. Today, the population has taken over several of these unfinished sites, where construction simply stopped dead 21 years ago. Supposed to host the National Water Company, this building is now used as a school, where pupils study in an unusual setting. But some places have escaped the looting, like the luxury Zekele Hotel.
When the marshal was here, there were 3 bars. The pool bar on the other side. This one is the blue bar. People used to come from everywhere. They came from Kinshasa. They came to drink and eat. There was joy. We are currently at the Red Bar. It was a renowned bar at the time of the poor marshal. Even he came here. But because he was the president, he couldn't stay very long. He would have fun for a few minutes and then go home.
But nights of partying are a distant memory. There's no longer electricity to keep the beer cold, nor any clients to drink it. In 1988, Mobutu built a fizzy drink bottling factory, producing 80,000 bottles a month. In the end, it could supply half of that, due to the weakness of local purchasing power. 9 years after production started, everything came to a stop. But the staff, still there, have been waiting patiently for a new owner. For 21 years.
The factory was Marshal Mobutu Sese Seko's initiative. He was the main shareholder. This company gave life to this city, Gbadolite. He didn't do it to earn money, but so that people would have a job. We still hope that someone will revive the company. We are waiting for a person of goodwill, a billionaire who would take an interest in investing here. He would be welcome here.
Tarmacked roads, running water, electricity. The population of Gbadolite could once touch the leopard of Zaire's dreams of grandeur. Those who benefited from the apparent prosperity of his rule have struggled to move on.
Marshal Mobutu isn't just anyone. He deserves a mausoleum. He deserves a monument.
Originally buried in this chapel, the bodies of Mobutu's family members were moved to this cemetery at the time of the looting. 2 of his sons are buried here, as well as his first wife, Marie Antoinette. The remains of her husband are still in Morocco. Papa Marechal, as the Congolese call him, today inspires a young generation of artists who were only children when the Democratic Republic of Congo was known as Zaire.
Il s'appelait Mobutu et pendant quelques 32 ans, il a régné en roi. Coiffé d'une toque en peau de léopard, il corrigeait sa vue par tes vers.
We have a duty to remember, to learn from the past, in order to better understand the present. Mobutu's charisma, his posture, his presence, all that made us very proud. But it vanished over time. Mobutu was still there, but his dignity was dying out.
The bustling Congolese capital also got a makeover under Mobutu. Deemed too colonial, Belgian Leopoldville became Kinshasa, a showcase of the new Zaire, known as Kinlabel. The dictator's landmarks reflected his ambition: the imposing Palace of the People, the seat of parliament, and a 210-meter-high tower, visible from anywhere in the city. Kambai Boachia, a historian and Mobutu's former education minister, has come here for the first time since the 1990s.
It's impressive, almost out of proportions. Mobutu had a spirit for greatness. He's a mystical man, and by sanctifying this tower, we sanctify Zaire at the same time. He's Zaire.
On the top floor, a fancy restaurant was supposed to offer views over the capital, but it was never completed. Professor Boachia says that Mobutu wanted to better the Congolese people.
Mobutu wanted to give us, the Congolese people, in the heart of Africa, the idea that we could be ourselves. We were no longer colonized. We are not white people. He rallied all Congolese people around this idea. People need to stand out. For that, they needed a proper outfit. This is the Mao Zedong model, with the distinctive Mao collar. And Mobutu loved it. He really loved it. And today, when you wear this in Kinshasa, people look at you and they think, how elegant is this man? A real supporter of Mobutu. That's great.
But behind the gleaming facade, Mobutu was leading the country to ruin. The absolute ruler shopped, ate, and at times imitated a European lifestyle, increasingly detached from his people, distancing himself further and further from reality. In Kinshasa, as elsewhere, dissident voices were silenced, his opponents tortured and murdered. In 1966, 8 months after his rise to power, Mobutu ordered that 4 politicians be hanged in the stadium, accusing them of plotting against the government. The people had been warned. Under his rule, protests were frequently repressed, often violently.
At this stage, it was getting complicated for the regime. That's when order was given to shoot at close range. One of my friends named Muamba was the first victim. When he fell, we realized that the situation was serious. We scattered, and the soldiers kept on shooting randomly. 17 people died on the site.
Students were protesting against the cancellation of meals at the university canteen, a sign that Zaire had to tighten its belt.
He did well when he first came into power, but from 1969 until he left, it was a disaster. When he felt we no longer wanted him, there was no stopping him.
Today, in the middle of a political crisis, some long for Mobutu. In Kinshasa, the Union of Mobutist Democrats are keen to revive the flame.
Marshal Mobutu is the father of our democracy. He was the one who allowed political pluralism back in April 1990.
Here, the former dictator is omnipresent, his world-famous hat appearing in every photo. Political and religious leaders once flocked from all over the world to meet the leopard, and Mobutu knew only too well how to charm them before he crossed a red line.
We, the people, started feeling that he was being let down by those who used to call themselves his friends. They were not here for him through the tough times, during his sickness.
Considered to be one of the most ruthless dictators of the 20th century, Mobutu is nonetheless revered by some today in the Democratic Republic of Congo.
We tend to create an idealistic image of the former president against a new one. When our current president leaves, the next one will make us idealize him, and so on.
At the end of December, the Democratic Republic of Congo will hold a presidential election. The final meetings before the vote are an opportunity for the nostalgic to speak up. Observers are hoping for a peaceful and democratic handover of power in Central Africa's biggest country, where the spectre of Mobutu continues to hover.
Horace Garcia and Thomas Nicolon revisiting the ruins of Gbadolite for France 24. Well, that's all from this week's edition. Don't forget, of course, you can catch it and all the previous editions as well on our website at france24.com.